What's up, everybody? My name is Isaiah Rivera. I have an officially tested 50.5-inch vertical. This right here is John Evans. He coaches me, and together we coach a bunch of athletes that specifically want to dunk and get rid of knee pain. By the way, if you want us to coach you, go to THPstrength.com. Use the code THP for 10% off your first month. Today we're going to be talking, I guess it's going to be a lesson in unloading and functional overreach
We're just
and,
going to talk about
and the dark arts of training.
one of the dark arts we don't discuss publicly.
I guess we could make this a functional overreach
We can talk
podcast.
about, actually, we can do that. We can talk about functional overreach and what the goal of it was and how it's different. We've never done it before.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have been, specifically people have been texting me saying and commenting, more educated coaches, why are you lifting so heavy this close to competition?
Which, by the way, let's give them some context on what's going on.
What is going on?
We are, if you can tell, I don't know
What's
if you can tell
happening?
from this angle, we are in a hotel room. It's not for the reason you might be.
It's not for the
reason
casting
you might be.
It's not for the casting couch, actually.
The reason we're in a hotel room is because we are in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's actually the city where I grew up. I went to high school here.
How far is your high school from here?
It's about a 5-minute drive.
And what high school did you go to?
Jordan High School,
Okay. And so we are dunking at the high school.
where I touched rim for the first time, where I had my first dunk on an indoor court in my life.
Yeah.
I was team manager. I was cut for my basketball team. The hoops on the side in the gym is where I was. When the tryouts happened, I couldn't dunk. Became team manager, and over the next month, I became nasty at dunking. So while the team was practicing, I was over on the side hoop.
I actually
down dunks.
never knew that.
Yeah,
How old were you?
16.
Wow.
Yeah, and the coach actually, after about a week of this happening, he told me, or 2 weeks of this happening, he was like, "You have a spot on the team next year." Then I moved. But yeah, it's where I grew up and where I fell in love with dunking originally. The reason we are here is for something called Dunk Camp. If you don't know what it is, go to thedunkcamp.com. It's basically the annual event that we train for to peak every year. It's where I test my vertical every single year. It's us, like 5 or 6 other pro dunkers, 70 athletes that are obsessed with dunking, and they all meet together and learn how to dunk, train, jump technique, and at the end there's a show where the pros perform. So it is basically the whole reason of training all year.
Yeah.
To peak for
This is really
It's our Olympics.
it's our Olympics. Olympic trials actually are happening right now. Ironically, that this happens the same exact week that Olympic trials are happening.
Yeah.
So the decathlon just finished, and I've definitely been good to have some of the guys that I have previously worked with, and then one of the guys I was currently coaching there, and now being at dunk camp this week with Isaiah, with that kind of lens of peaking, right? So coming in, we've done a lot of things that were different than we've done in previous years, and usually when I try to peak guys, I want them to back off heavily within like a 7 to 10 day period. I try to keep intensity really, really, really high and almost just absolutely crush them leading into a major competition. So Isaiah has done this, I don't know, how many times have I done this with you? Like every 6 months for the last 5 years?
Yeah, I mean,
Sometimes every three months, it depends.
since 2019, if it's about every 3 months probably where it's like a big
Realistically,
taper and I jump really high. So
But
4
how is
times.
it different this year now? What are we doing?
So
And that has always pretty much worked.
So
to a T.
what the goal is, which is always the goal, is to jump higher. I'm trying to touch 12.4. The highest I've ever touched is 12.3.5. The goal is to break past that. With that in mind, we are trying something different, something experimental. We're doing it in the name of science, if you will.
Science.
It's called functional overreach, and it is essentially having a period of time where you are jumping a lot.
Well,
In this specific case.
I mean, technically, a functional overreach just means that you are overtraining for a period of time, but it's not so long that it causes overtraining syndrome. That's kind of what a functional overreach is. That's why it's functional, and you try to see a big decrement in performance because of the heavy volume that you're doing, and then you see a bigger supercompensation. And a lot of people maybe use this at different times of the year. You can ultimately it's a theory or a concept, and as long as you apply that concept correctly, it can work really well. So we talked about Isaiah and his experience coming back from dunking in China, where he was dunking almost every day or every other day for a week.
Yeah, it was. So
10
that
days
was
or
last
something?
August. I was in China for 10 days. Well, I was gone for 10 days in China for probably 8 or 9, and I think I dunked 4 or 5 days out of the 8 or 9.
Yeah.
So it was every other day or back to back days that I was dunking.
And then I had just moved to Orlando. Austin was in Spain. He comes back and he's just jumping very, very well. Right? Incredibly well. At that
Yeah,
time.
I basically did that. I was really hurt, like not super hurt, but just really achy. The injuries that I was tracking were at all year highs. So then I backed off coming out of there.
How long did you back off for?
It was probably like a week.
Yeah. And we talked about this at the time, and this was what, because my friend Ryan Nagel was like, oh, why are you pushing him so hard now? As opposed to like having done that in the past. And I was like, we did, idiot. This was planned, not actually.
And I trained really hard going into
going
China as well.
We
And
tried to push as much as possible and then back off really hard.
Yeah, and then I ended up jumping really high. And then there was a second time that we did a accidental functional overreach.
Was this because you lack self-control, or was this because I planned it?
It just kind of happened. So
okay, so you lack self-control. Go on.
It wasn't even. I would even say that it was when I tested 50.5 last February, the highest I've ever jumped.
Okay, yeah.
I had a dunk event, so I had trained again really hard for like 3 months, deloaded, did a dunk event. This is where the lack of self-control comes in.
That's what I.
That weekend, I jumped left, right. The next day, I did right, left for like 2 hours. I did a contest. Then an hour later, a session.
Was that All-Star weekend?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that was essentially 3 sessions in 2 days. I come back. I did a plyo session. Then again that week, I did a left-right session, I think. So it was like in the span of a week, maybe 4 or 5 days where I was doing elastic work, really high intensity.
Specificity was at an all-time high.
And then
volume was at an all-time high of specific volume.
And then the next week, I think I did plyos one more time, another session. So in a 2-week span, whatever, like 7 sessions or something.
And he was banged up, like
very banged up.
His meniscus on the left leg was
right
leg was really sore.
TFL
couldn't really bend it. TFL was sore.
Right knee
was sore, and it was like kind of a little bit of lack of discipline, and then the loading and the way that we did it was just really high volume. Like I was testing plyos with him, which I don't do often, and you guys oftentimes are like, why don't you do more plyos? We don't do more plyos because every time I do plyos, Isaiah gets hurt, and you guys can look back at the YouTube videos. It might be on his channel or my channel of him doing like the 55-inch depth jump and touching, I think, 11.3 or 11.4.
Yeah, that was your YouTube.
Oh, it was my YouTube?
And I touched 11.4.
So it's on my
off
YouTube.
Off a 60-inch box.
So the purpose of that was to load elastic volume. And it wasn't this perfect progression. It just had a progression of increasing intensity. And then he went out and touched 50.5 through.
Well, this is the second part, though. Is after that functional overreach, I basically power cleaned and squatted heavy.
For what, 2 weeks?
It was maybe a week.
Was it a week?
Yeah.
Okay. So then we took all that information at the time, and now it's March, right? March 4th, actually. I know this. Yeah. And we sat down, talked about it, leading into dunk camp, and then made a plan of exactly what we wanted to do leading into what is now this week, right? So he's supposed to test tomorrow, assuming everything goes as planned and, we have time and everything else. We were going to try to – do you want to talk about the Guinness thing?
Yeah.
We're going to try to do that. It's might be difficult, and we don't want to detract from what he's doing or distract him. So we're just going to film it. If they accept it, they accept it. If not,
basically for Guinness,
it's not worth doing.
How Guinness works is you have to put in an application. Which, by the way, like the backstory of the Guinness thing, Darius Clark has the Guinness record for highest approach vertical, 50 inches. I've tested 50.5, measuring everything, my reach and the vertec, but it wasn't Guinness verified. So it's like I have a record and he has a Guinness record. Which is, it's weird. I actually see it as like how the Olympics has there's an Olympic record and then there's a world record.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I see
it.
So
he probably sees it like, he has the world record and you have the Olympic record.
Yeah. But I have the higher one. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of weird how that works.
So the plan was to get Guinness there in person to verify it. Come to find out, it costs $16,000.
Which
have
not
Guinness
really
there to
worth it.
verify it.
Or you can do it the other way.
The other way is you have to document everything yourself. You have to have 2 people in there that are verifying everything. You have to record everything in one camera that's showing everything nonstop. Then you have to have a photographer documenting everything to corroborate with the video. And it is a lot of moving pieces that I personally have to coordinate. And when you have to do that and then also worry about testing well, I was just like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to break this for me and then try to save up $16,000.
I mean, they
and
might
then
accept it. Just send it to them.
Yeah, we're still going to try it.
We're still
Sending
going to
the
try.
evidence.
It's just that we're just going to have him measuring his reach on camera.
Yeah.
And we're going to have him jumping and testing, and it's going to be one shot. And if they take it, they take it. If not, it's like, okay, we get it. We've done it multiple times. We'll do it again another time, or we'll do it this way. Because it's like the stress of that, especially when he's testing, if there's any distraction from what he's trying to do or time lapse in his rest period where he's not just focusing on jumping higher, his performance will drop.
It's happened twice.
And it'll drop a lot, like very significantly.
It's happened twice when earlier this year we did a max vert test on turf, and I was jumping, it was getting higher, and then we had a 7-minute break to try to measure the vertex, see where it was at.
Which was a bitch.
And then it just, boom, dropped. Then a couple months later, again testing, and this is actually, I tested 50, it was either 49.5 or 50 on the day. And it was the same thing. I was flying, then we took a break. Not a break. We measured the vertex, and just that like extra 2 minutes of trying to do that and then resetting everything.
Like even just changing your body posture when you're that warm and prepared is enough to throw you off. Like you can imagine, imagine if you were in the Olympics as a high jumper or a long jumper, and you had to measure your jump after you just tried to break the world record, and then go back and do it again. Like it's just not realistic. The adrenaline, the environment, every variable has to be dialed in for that performance to occur. And if you have a distraction or something happen where you just get a little bit off rhythm, that's enough to throw off the entire ecosystem that
like
you
my
needed
focus
to break
has
the
to
world
be
record.
on the task.
Which is why dunk camp's so good, is because there's like 25 of us that can help doing it. And this year, what probably will happen is we'll probably
measure everything after.
Measure
Test,
everything
measure it
after, yeah.
and
Well,
then
assume it's right. Assume it's right.
Yeah.
Or maybe what we do is
measure it beforehand.
Measure before.
Yeah.
And then see is it accurate or not, and then double check after.
Yeah.
Because
ideally, I would like to work my way up the vertex. So it's like whatever touch 12.1 and 12.2 and 12.3, whatever the hell it is, and then hopefully it's accurate. But I think we can measure it beforehand and just make sure it is.
Yeah.
But
and we're using a different vertex this time. It's not a vertex at all. It's something different. Well, it is a vertex. It measures your vertical, but you'll see on tomorrow. You'll see it tomorrow. I don't think
it's been released yet.
Yeah, we won't say anything about it, but we're really excited about it. I think it's going to be way faster, easier to set up, easier to use, and this will be like a trial period to see. I think there's a bell involved. The bell is going to be amazing. I'm really excited. So yeah, it's going to be really, really cool. But that all said, the reason with the functional overreach of what we're trying to do here, or what we planned to do in March, was go through a cycle where we got up his max concentric numbers, right? So you guys probably remember back in March, he was lifting super heavy, pushing the numbers up. In all of those lifts, we did, I can't even remember that cycle.
Hand-supported split squat, panda pulls.
It was very general, though. So there was a lot of variety involved, and it wasn't like meant to be very specific. It was just meant to increase volume. Those sessions were long. They were hard. The split squats were brutal for you guys, him and Austin. And then the next cycle, we did the isometrics. Those were even longer, even harder sessions. They were like 3 hours long in the weight room. And then after that, in the third mesocycle, we did, what did we do after that?
The eccentrics, the
fast.
Super maximal.
Super max. You're right. Okay, yeah. So then we did super maximal, and that was front squat lowers down to a lower pin. We did the leg extension machine, I think, a couple times. We had to be really creative because Isaiah was nursing a lot of different types of injuries. Like he had a TFL thing, his meniscus was pissed off.
Back was another thing.
His back was work around. And as you get more capable at producing force and you need these more complex stimuli, the cost benefit relationship starts to shift more in favor of cost, or like risk reward starts to favor risk. So you really have to be careful about trying to get the adaptation that you want, at least as a coach. What I'm trying to do is get the adaptation that I want from him, right? And then also not hurt him, because if I end up hurting him in the weight room, then what's the point, right? He's not going to be able to perform or jump. So then we did a cycle of faster eccentric work, and this was the functional overreach, was meant to be 2.5 weeks. It was meant to be 2.5 weeks of, it was like jumping, and then I think there was 2 days in the weight room that were really fast, explosive work where we could, and then really focusing on jumping. And so it was like, well, that was what, 2 weeks? We did that for 2 weeks?
The jumping?
No. Like when you did the hang cleans, with the drop, the counter movement hang cleans.
Oh, I think that was 3. I think that was 3 weeks.
It was 3 weeks of that?
Yeah.
Is that when we did the super maximal squats too?
No.
I don't think
it was. It was.
It was? Oh, that was the same?
Yeah.
Oh, because you did 2 up, 1 down on the leg. That's right.
Yeah, and it was, I think you were thinking it was 2 weeks because the first week we did it manually, the leg extensions manually.
Okay, yeah. So that cycle was tricky. We were able to build in a lot of fatigue despite that, because, again, we were working around a lot of injuries. That's why it's hard for me to remember, because we had to make so many adjustments in that cycle. Like one day we would do max front squat negatives, and it was tough because I would have him build up to singles in front squat, and then I would have him do negatives after that. And Austin and I would like assist on the way up, and then Isaiah would lower down without us, and then we'd assist on the way up. And he would do reps of super maximal eccentric work, or super maximal concentric work on the eccentric, meaning he's lowering more weight than he can lift up. So it's like loading the living hell out of his body. Not just his muscles, like the muscles, the tendons, the bones, his spine, his nervous system. You're really just maxing out all of those variables. And then we tried to pair or blend some of the gaps of rate of force development by doing very high, what we call eccentric TPV, time to peak velocity exercises. So he would jump into a counter movement. He would do like a counter movement hang clean pull, high pull, into a power clean. And took some learning to get that exercise to work well, but I actually had Rolf double check, who's a friend of mine, an Australian coach, what the time to peak velocities were and eccentric peak forces, and they were crazy high on that exercise. So we picked a good exercise there. And then after that, it was like, okay, 3 months of training, building up fatigue. So it's March, April, May, and now we're in June. So it was like, okay, let's do 2.5 weeks of, and it was we probably finished that cycle at the end of May. So it was like, all right, we have 2.5 weeks of a functional overload or functional overreach, where we need to try to get as much jumping as possible without you getting hurt while maintaining your back squat and your power clean. So we basically planned to do a jump session, left, right, for a period of time that he could handle, but still be able to bounce back for a decent lift after 48 hours. So it's like jump, 48 hours later, you rest, do upper or whatever. Now he's got to do a high intensity lower body session. So heavy cleans if possible, which his hips started giving him issues. So now we can't pull from the floor, but we've got to still try to get a strong stimulus here as much as possible. And then I would try to crush him in basically everything. Like I'd be like, whatever you can do to failure, try. So we're on the leg extension machine because he can't squat to depth. We're doing 4 sets of 5 on the leg curl or hip thrust or calf raise or band walks. So it's basically what I call the John Evans special, but way harder. Like going kind of to failure on all of those exercises. 48 hours
and
later.
Jumping.
That's what I was going to say. 48 hours later, he's going to jump. Now he's going to jump. So you're basically getting like, in an 8-day period, or let's see, day 1 jump, day 2 off, day 3 lift hard, day 4 off. Like in a 4-day span, you get 2 maximal stimuli. Whereas in a week, we might only have 2 lifts that are really hard, and then a jump session, and then like kind of an easy lift to just feel better. So like you get 3 high intensity days in a week, one of which is jumping, and 2 lifts, right, across that 7-day period. Now in an 8-day period, we're actually getting 4 high intensity days, right? And that we're able to maintain that cycle as well. So now he has slightly higher density, right, in that 14-day period, or I think it was 16 days or something like that. So we have higher density of those high intensity sessions, and specificity's gone up. So not only does he have more frequent high intensity days in a row, now it's not like he'd have off the weekend, right? So he never has more than 48 hours rest. And if he has like a jump session planned, he's going to jump somehow, some way. And the tricky part is keeping him healthy, right? That's why we don't jump every day. That's why we don't jump even. This was a stretch. And Isaiah, you can talk about your experience.
Yeah. So when
I explain it that way, it puts it in perspective how much volume you actually had.
So that's what we wanted to have in theory. When a functionally overreach, that's how we wanted to happen. And in theory, you finish healthy.
And you're very fatigued from the jumping.
And very fatigued.
With very high specificity.
Now, what actually happened is I jumped really freaking high every session. Literally, I think every session I had, except
I tried very hard to not have this happen because we would just push the time up as much as we could. But it was like each week, it just got better and better and better. And that was a bit concerning because that's
you want to see the opposite
what is
thing
supposed to happen. And I wasn't sure if it was like, oh, he's having this short-term adaptation where like he's actually just he's recovering because the volume's lower still because I had them in the weight room for 3.5 hours. What am I going to do? Keep him in there for 4 hours? But like I can't do that because if he's jumping twice every 8 days, well, like you're basically jumping twice a week. That's already really difficult. So how do I build in more fatigue without hurting him? Yeah. That was the dilemma we ran into.
It was very tough.
So what did we do? We just had you jump longer.
Long sessions. I was jumping really high during them. My body, the lifts, I try to push because we joke around about me being neurotic about losing strength.
But it's very true.
So I was trying to push as hard as I could in the weight room, and my body ended up pretty banged up, I would say. Yeah. Left knee flared up. My hip.
We were definitely towing the line of what we probably should. Like we shouldn't have been doing that.
But we had multiple conversations where I was just like, I am willing to get hurt.
Do we pull the plug on this?
Yeah.
Or do we push through? Like I vividly remember after UCF you being like, what do you want to do?
Yeah. So I basically just want to see if this works or not.
He could bomb out.
Yeah.
He could bomb out.
It's a test. This is literally, I'm calling it a science experiment. Our hypothesis is that it is going to work and that I could PR my vertical. But again, this is our first time trying it. But this is the time to try it. You might make the argument like, why not test this at a different point of the year? And it's because you only get your best jumps when the environment is correct.
It's like that delicate ecosystem I was talking about.
And I'm not going to be able to get the same environment with the adrenaline, other elite athletes there. I'm not going to be able to match that any other point in the year. So this is the time to see if this type of training is more effective for me. And it is kind of doubly validated. I did test it twice, technically. So we're making a hypothesis, like all scientists should,
based off information. Controlled. This is much more controlled as much as we possibly could. Yeah. Like, we were definitely pushing the limit, even in the eccentric cycle, of what we could do. Actually, I would say towards the end of the isometric focus, like, and this is not isos like you're pausing with a sub-maximal weight. This is like maximal isometric. You're pushing as hard. I've never done more complex training stimuli than I did with Austin and Isaiah in the last 12 weeks. Maybe 1 4-week period this year after last dunk camp when we had the eccentric cycle and you lowered like 600 pounds in a back squat. But like we couldn't afford to do that again after trying to maintain his strength levels because we were loading his back so heavily to maintain his squat. So we couldn't afford
to do that
again, right? And so what's going to happen? I mean, our hypothesis is it works. He jumps 53 inches and not 53. The goal is he jumps at least 50.5 with 51 on the table, right? Or I'd say the goal is 51.
Yeah, the goal is definitely 51. Just because I see the conditions under which I tested 50.5 last time. I didn't even go in to Vertec. When I've PR'd my vertical on Vertec before, that's like I'm warming up with that in mind.
All that you need is blue hair guy there, and there's a chance you can hit your world-class performance. If you guys don't know who blue hair guy is, that's Jordan Kilgannon. It's like Voldemort. We don't mention his name in the podcast. He's just as pale, too. No, I'm just kidding.
No, because I'm very competitive, and when there's other people in the gym that are comparable verticals, it pushes me really hard.
Like, it could be Jay Clark tomorrow. It could be Sutherland. It could be
some random.
I don't know. Yeah, it could be Hiram Fexner. Yeah. Fexner. Could be him. We don't know. But regardless, that is a very crucial part that
It's adrenaline, caffeine. I haven't been taking caffeine, and
Austin
I'm
and
gonna
I
take
are
caffeine.
not going to be able to give him that push any other time. Like we don't jump high enough to do that, and we're not tall enough to create the same effect that the competitive dunkers do with him. And so it's like when they're in town and we know they're in town and we know that we have access to Vertex and we know we have time and we know we have space, like very rarely do we have those conditions occur because we don't really have space or time or pro dunkers at any 24 or LA Fitness. And we're not going to – and bringing a Vertex in is a bitch and setting it up is a bitch. So unless you, like, really plan ahead of time and set things up a month out, which this is set up a year out, you know, like it's very difficult to recreate that. So, yeah, I think that's basically all I have to say. That is what we're hoping to see happen.
Let us know what you guys think based on the information we just had. What do you think is going to happen?
We really screwed the pooch here.
Look, the thing is worst case scenario, I don't see myself jumping lower than 50. Just based on how I've been jumping, because I've definitely, and based off flight times and just my head over the rim.
See, my thing is like testing-wise, I don't know how you'll do, but I know you're going to be flying. Like I don't know how else to explain that.
I think the minimum, I don't see myself jumping lower than like 12-1s, 48.
Well, no, there's no way. That won't happen.
I'm
There's
touching
no way that'll happen.
that high to give you context. I'm touching that high right left.
Yeah, I don't think.
And then you take adrenaline and caffeine.
That's easily going to happen. I think that's easily going to happen.
But it's the question of like, will it be my highest ever? And I think this is where the difficulty
will
of
Usain Bolt run like his world record's 9:58? Is he going to run 9:53? Like that's really what we're trying to figure out. Like he might run 9:75 or he might run 9:70, which is awesome. That's great, whatever. But we're trying to test this and see, can we just push that world record a little bit further along? Can we just push it a little bit higher, a little bit more out of reach for everyone else? So yeah, I mean, I hope that that was insightful for a lot of you guys listening to this. If you have questions, leave it in the comment section below. Put your predictions in there in 24 hours.
And
if you get it right, maybe we'll send you a
in
shirt.
24 hours, I will be. I guess by the time they see this, it'll be a little less. But in 24 hours, I'll be warming up.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool to think about.
You getting an adrenaline rush right now?
I'm getting a big adrenaline rush. You know what actually was giving me a big adrenaline rush when we were walking up here is I was like, whoa, a lot of people. That's like a thing.
What do you mean?
A lot of people are gonna be like. That's part of what they think is gonna be dunk camp. It's like me testing
like you breaking the world
like
record.
a lot of people are having that expectation of
for
me.
you to test.
Yeah, and I was like, whoa, it's kind of cool.
People are like, yeah, we think he's gonna do it.
Yeah,
like, he's ready.
Yeah.
It's almost like when Otto Bolden, I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, when he's like the color man or whatever for the track events and the sprints, and he's like, yeah, I talked to Christian Coleman before the race, and it looks like he's in shape to run that 970, whatever they talk about. That's kind of the way that I feel like everyone's kind of watching you.
Yeah.
Is they're like,
it's like I'm in shape.
They've been watching
jumping
you.
well, training well.
Everyone has been watching. Not everyone, but people in the community have been watching. I mean, we're talking tens to potentially 50,000 plus people have been watching you through your YouTube, my YouTube, build up to this point, and your Instagram, right? Where it's like, look, this is where we're really trying to see what is the pinnacle of human performance. We planned for it. It is planned correctly with someone that knows what they're doing. It's not like you're just like showing up and hoping for the best, you know? Yeah. So it'll be good. I'm excited regardless. And I always say this, you don't lose, waiting. I know. But I always say this, you don't lose, you learn. Like worst case, we just walk away from this and we're like, all right, yeah, that did
worst case, I have a really fun dunk session.
Yeah, which is still awesome. But yeah, that's the video, guys. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to get the level of complexity of coaching that I use when I'm looking at someone like Isaiah, or it's just someone with a 35-inch vertical, go to THPstrength.com.
If you want to peak for that men's league game in December,
know, man. Whatever your Olympics is, man, we will peak you for your Olympics, whatever it is to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the video, guys. We'll see you. I don't know when we'll see you next.
Tomorrow. Oh
yeah, we're gonna post the video. Oh no, we'll podcast. Oh yeah, we'll podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow. See you guys.